Hello and welcome to Randomly Generated Encounters from Wandering Monster. I am your host, John Baldisberger. This is a show where I suppose, I'm the host, interview various game creators, designers, artists, people who are working in the creative space of gaming and maybe occasionally horror. We will see. Um, what we're attempting to do here is really kind of get into the meat of what goes into creating cool games. Um and and more than cool games, because the word cool is meaningless, right? uh Everyone has a different definition, but what really boils down to is interesting games that do things that are maybe a little different than, say, uh, a combat simulation engine, or and I've railed against this my entire career, standard Western fantasy tropes. So, with that in mind, I am pleased to welcome David Schirduan with me today. The I'm going to say lead designer over at Technical Grimoire, a creative director. We all have so many different titles we slap in front of very hungry writer attempting to make cool stuff. Um, Thank you for joining me today, David. How are you?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks so much for having me. I know that
Absolutely.
um, y'all have taken a been kind enough to feature Bones Deep in a few places, and I'm excited to like nerd out with you and give back to all the kindness and attention you've shown me.
It's interesting. I was thinking before you came on that our first two guests, because this is a relatively new show, our first two guests, Joel Clark and Billy Blue, are creators that I've worked with in some kind of professional capacity before. And I thought, well, David will be my first kind of like cold call, so to speak. But at the same time, I did a review of Bones Deep on the One Moncast blog, and I got a chance to actually run Bones Deep for the One Mon cast while Ian was out. So it's not like I'm going into this blind, and I have done. Ooh, I've done some interviews blind. They're not always pretty. Um, so first, to kind of tell my story of our, of this, I found Bones Deep on Kickstarter, a website that I frequent and that frequently takes my money.
Oh,
Um, I think I got maybe three paragraphs in. I saw the hero image, right? I saw the map of the ocean, and I saw, I want to say, the like rune carver skeleton scrimshawing its own bones, and I was like, all right, take my money. I back the hardcover edition immediately. Dude, man, I wanted to get the dice because you had beautiful dice for that project. Wasn't able to, but you had a really pretty Kickstarter, and one of the things that I have championed over the years is that no matter how good your game is, art and prettiness is what's going to really drive a TTRPG Kickstarter. So, all that in mind, we'll go into the actual experience of Bones Deep in a minute. Uh what was it like setting up, building out, and playtesting a game as story driven as Bones Deep, where the mechanics are in fact like story elements?
mm. So I actually am going to dodge the question and do a quick early plug. The
Fantastic.
creator who, yeah, I know, right? You're welcome. Um, the creator who made those beautiful dice has actually made more and is
Ooh,
selling them on her website. So
awesome.
you have the chance to correct your mistake. And anybody who's watching as well, I have to plug Mythscapades. They made the dice. They have a website now with a storefront. and they're these beautiful like skull and crossbones with like algae floating in the die.
They are
And it's
gorgeous. Look,
yeah,
I look at dice on a semi-professional level, and these are beautiful dice.
yeah. She did an incredible job bringing like our vision to life, and she has like a couple extra left over, and she's making more. So if you want to, go grab them because they're back. Uh, sorry for the plug. Um, so Bones Deep is built on an existing game called Troika. Um,
Mhm.
Troika made a big splash because of its simple, unique mechanics, and because the writing was very evocative. The writing had a way of describing something without being specific, almost in a way that forces the players to fill in the gaps themselves. And it made sense to use that as our platform to build Bones Deep on top of because there's so much stuff that we can't specify in the setting and in the ocean. And we tried to leave gaps just like Troika does for players to fill those in and get engaged with the story from the very start.
Now, I will say, I have bought a few books from the, Mesothelioma Arts Council. Uh, I'll never get that right. I'm sure Ian's screaming in chat right now. Um, Troika's a beautiful another beautiful game, and in fact, I remember you saying that you were going to use the same printer as them because you were so kinda taken by their, ability to do these really high quality hardback books. Um, and I have to say, yeah, Bones Deep and Troika, both of those books are just they're nice books. Beyond even art,
Mhm.
they're very high quality. But going back, so my I going back to my review of Bones Deep, my biggest gripe was that I wanted more of the beautiful art. Um, it was an interesting blend because artistically speaking, Bones Deep is not like Troika's art. Um, there's a few really not few is a disservice. There's a lot of art that's really beautiful, that's really evocative, and then I would say almost every page that doesn't have original art has at least one like 1600s map fish on it.
Right.
W- What was the choice on that art? Did you want to just have as much art as you were possible within budget, or did you really want to evoke that style of aesthetic?
So art's always a funny thing for an indie RPG. I think a lot of people are used to Wizards of the Coast or Call of Cthulhu or something with a big budget name associated to it, like Cyberpunk 2077 or the Witcher RPG, where every page has got a $500 bit of spot art on it.
Hmm.
And just to make the book is $10,000 of art, easy, if
Hmm.
not way more than that. And that's just not feasible for a lot of indie creators. So in a lot of projects that I've done before, we try to find a good balance between art that we pay for and public domain work that we can use or remix or sort of flash up a little bit to look nice. In this case, we partnered with Laura Ketchum, who is an extremely talented artist. Somehow her drawings managed to be cute and creepy at the same time. I don't know how she pulled that off, but she did the beautiful cover, she did all the skeleton illustrations, and she did the few that are obviously digital modern bits of art.
Hmm.
The rest, we had started collecting public domain art, and we had found lots of generic, whales, fish, seaweed, and then we stumbled across this old manuscript from, I think his name is like Johannes Johann. It's got one of those repetitive names. Johannes Johnstonus from the 1600s. And his book just had 400 pages of this like insane woodcut art.
Hmm.
All had a similar style. All the lines were the same width, stuff like that. So there was a
Oh,
consistency
nice. So
there.
consistency.
Right. Consistency was huge. And after doing a ton of research, I realized that all of his artwork was based on the dried out samples of sea creatures. Um,
Oh.
so there's this one creature that looks like some kind of alien or demon, and it's just a dried up stingray. Because a lot of the fins get dried up and shrivel, and that's what he drew. He's like, "This is a stingray. This is what it looks like." And so we really liked that sort of fantastical interpretation of real creatures that reflected the rest of the book, which is also heavily based on real marine biology.
Mhm.
And so the theming melt together. We found enough artwork that I think it looks pretty good and has the vibe. But if I could have filled the book with Laura's work, I would have, because her stuff is so incredible.
Look, I completely look. First of all, as as a as a fellow designer and as a publisher, art and as someone who can't draw, right? Art is the bane of my budget's existence. Uh, that said, I don't think there's anything wrong with using public domain art, and I think
No,
that games like Markborg have really popularized it in indie art. Uh, to the point where I think sometimes it's overused. Uh, or let me rephrase that. Sometimes I've seen games or modules and adventures where it feels very lazy. Um, but I think that there are a lot of creators that are using it to really great effect, and I don't think I the art in Bones Deep looks purposeful. I wanted more of Laura's art because it's beautiful, but that is not to knock the use of the art assets you had. And the formatting, by the way, whoever did layout and formatting did a fantastic job. So
oh, thanks. That was me.
kudos. I will be sending you work shortly because it looks great. Did you use InDesign for layout?
Affinity. I use the Affinity suite.
Okay, okay.
Hmm.
You know what? My layout artist, Lori Michelle, uh, who's an incredible she's one of the owners of Ghoulish Books, amazing layout artist and human being. She uses Affinity too. And she does that because she doesn't want to pay for Adobe.
Yep.
And now I'm wondering, like, if all the best layout artists are using Affinity, what am I doing over at Adobe? Um,
Yeah, Affinity does 90% of what Adobe does. There's some things that you miss out on, but 90% for 10% of the price, yeah, I'll take it.
I use like 15% of what Adobe can do anyway, so like that's fine. Um, okay, Bones Deep is a let's call it a troika hack just for simplicity's sake, right? It does. I've played a lot of troika. I've played some Bones Deep. They don't feel similar to me. Um, I can easily see the what you're talking about with there are gaps in the storytelling for players, and I'm going to get to that in just a second because it's my goddamn favorite thing about Bones Deep. Okay, my second favorite thing about Bones Deep. Um, but like mechanically, and I would say thematically, they feel like very distant cousins rather than siblings.
Yeah. And you can primarily thank Captain Andrew Harrison, one of the lead writers of the book. My wife and I started working on Bones Deep as like a small zine. It was going to be Troika because I know that Troika fans have money and they're supportive, and so I wanted to I wanted to join
Don't
that community.
you leave my fungi the far realm alone.
That book
$60 on
was
a book of watercolor
$60,
mushrooms. So dumb, but it's
and
so
I have
beautiful.
one too.
It's so good.
Um, it's amazing. It's incredible. Um, so we were just going to make a small Troika zine. It was going to be 20, 30 pages of silly skeletons, like an underwater Atlantis kind of a thing. And it was going to be really
Mhm.
goofy and lighthearted. Um, I was telling Captain Andrew about it. He's a friend of mine, and he was he's like, "Oh, I'd love to write a little something for it. You know, just I am passionate about marine biology and I love D&D. I'd love to write something for it." So I was like, "Okay, yeah, take a week or two, brainstorm something, send me some text. We'll see if we can work it in. We'll do a profit split or whatever." 4 days later, he sends me 35 pages of detailed content. I mean, it was he had done stats and like unique mechanics for all the creatures. He had fleshed out different biomes, adventures. It was crazy. Um, and that immediately exploded the book. We went from 20 pages to 75 just with his additions. Um, and it was funny because I remember I wanted to move one of the fish encounters to a different location. I was like, this location has too many aggressive species. We're going to move this aggressive species to the polar regions. And he said, you can't do that. The arapaima doesn't live in the polar regions. I'm like, the arapaima is not a real fish. This is a fantasy game about skeletons. And Andrew had to stop me and say, this is all real. Like
Mhm.
90% of this stuff is real. I layered on some fantasy, but the arapaima really does have diamond teeth. It really can reflect electricity back to its attackers. It really does camouflage itself at the bottom of a river. Like, and I realized his passion for marine biology had been expressed through the game. To me, it was a silly Troika book, and I was ready to like rip it apart and add more fantastical stuff. But to him, this was his passion shining through. And I think that drastically affected the tone because we went from fantasy, lighthearted underwater adventure to almost more of a real world setting with a layer of goofiness on top.
Hmm.
And Troika is normally not that grounded. Troika is
Yeah, no,
normally much crazier.
I see. So there's another game called Cuticorium. I
Oh boy.
interviewed them a while back. A guy named Ulysses Duck, and it's
The
a
Insect
pub game.
Adventure RPG?
Part, sir?
The Insect Adventure RPG?
Yes, yeah.
Ah, I see it.
Uh,
Wow.
but they had a like real entomologist, yeah, entomologist
Mm,
working on the book and like making sure things synced up with how bugs would actually act and think and like uh not too long ago, no, I say not too long ago, forever ago, we published a book called Encyclopedia Sharksploitanica, which was a
mhm.
marine biologist reviewing bad shark movies. I think
Nice.
that when people's passions in science, where that meets fantasy and fiction, is a really fascinating and cool place. And it's really hard not to get swept up in someone else's passion when they're allowed to really explore it. I wrote
Agreed.
a book years ago called War Dictates. It's based on Jewish mythology. And over again, people would ask me, like, hey, is this crazy thing that happens in this book like actual, like, is this in the Bible or is this something you made up? It's like, nope, that's part of the actual like Talmud. So
Mhm,
it's that again, that blurred line is extremely cool to me. So,
mhm.
speaking of the gaps in stories, the key mechanic of Bones Deep is memories. And that is giving GMs, people running this game, a monumental task and a monumental hammer. When you were putting it together, what were you what were you thinking? Were you how were you intending it to be used, and did you feel the need to try to balance it at all?
Interesting. It's a good question. Um, the memory is a theme in a lot of my games. I try to give players a direct way to add information or get information through various ways. Um, so it that's just part of my design brain. I always go to think like, how can we fill in the backstory of whatever we're doing, whether that's flashbacks like Blades in the Dark or background information from Troika, whatever, or learning new skills, that kind of thing. For Bones Deep, had a very specific purpose, and that is you can't talk to fish. Um, in fact, you can only talk to a few kinds of creatures underneath the waves. And I wanted the GM to be able to include more nonviolent, interactive scenarios. Um, and so that's how I pitch it in the book, is that it's a way for the GM to hand wave letting players talk to fish. They can ask the fish if they've seen anything recently. Do you know where the glowing rock might be? How are the waters? Has anything changed? So it has a very it allows for a style of play besides killing everything in the ocean. Um, Honestly, I had a lot of trepidation about it because it can also be very intimidating for a GM. There's a kind of player who will pick up a doorknob and be like, I absorb the memory of the doorknob. What do I get? And a GM can feel put on the spot. Like, I did not prep any history for the doorknob. So I tried to add in some tables to make it a little bit more manageable. I tried to add a downside to players so they don't abuse it. Um, and I hope that GMs aren't too intimidated by that. But I do admit that that's kind of a giant, like, extra bit of work on top of uh, what is a simple game.
Yeah, so I think this is another diverging point between Troika and Bones Deep, right? And because I feel Troika is very capable of throwing together a group that doesn't really know each other and, going and having weird fun. I think Bones Deep requires, because of the memories, right, requires a more tight knit community to play. People that you have to have built trust. You have to
Right.
understand the players and the GM. So, for instance, when we were running the adventure in the book, right, there's a locked door with a keypad, and my players, I want to say it was Charles, was like, okay, well, I'm gonna touch the keypad and absorb the memory, like
Hmm.
easy peasy. Uh, and I put forth a scene of two of the crewmates who were in a relationship, a same-sex relationship, arguing over like the closeted person revealing this relationship to his family, and then punching in the code and kind of dejectedly walking through the door. I could have just said,
Mm.
"You see someone punch in this code, right?"
Right.
Uh, and if I don't know the group, maybe that's what I do. But if you know the group, if you have the right setting, it allows the GM to do a lot more storytelling and world building, um, in a really it was a really cool moment that was improv, right? I didn't sit down like, "How can I make this game gay?" Although I do that pretty often. I
Right.
do
That's
I
a
do
good
think,
goal.
"You know what this game needs? More rainbows," and I'm usually
More
right.
crime.
Okay, sidebar, have you seen the Lancer RPG on Kickstarter and their slogan? It's
I
"Be
have played
gay, do
Lancer.
giant robot crimes."
Oh, hell
And
yeah.
it's
That's
like, "Alright,
amazing.
take the money, you got it. Got it
Yep.
in one, buddies."
Yep. Just like
Okay,
a Thirsty Sword Lesbians, that
Thirsty
game
Sword
fulfilled.
Lesbians, yes.
That's it. It's over.
Ugh. Uh, I think that, I think that Bones Deep allows for really intimate and really personal storytelling, but again, that is something that the GM has to know where the players are comfortable and what the players want to hear. Because if you're playing with a random group, uh, bright side, maybe the homophobe leaves the table. Dark side, maybe your players don't want that kind of story and are kind of off put. maybe one of them has had that situation. Now they're feeling kind of yucky about themselves. So it's a great tool, but it could be dangerous. But I love it. I want to get to the elephant in the room, David. I want to get to I want to get to the hard question for you.
Okay.
You and I are both professionals. We're adults.
Hmm.
We both work in gaming.
Yep.
We're both professional writers. Um, at the same time, we're both 13-year-old boys, as is everyone
13 and a
in
half.
13, 13 and a quarter for me. Um, you know where I'm going with this. Bones deep, man. How I can't like look when I'm trying to tell a new group of people about this cool game, and I'm like, "Yep, bones deep." It's giggles. It's Giggle Town. It's a sex phrase, David.
Yes. We joke about the skeleton dating game Bone Deeper is in the works.
Ooh, deeper. I
Uh,
barely even know her.
That's right.
Ugh,
So I can explain this.
please.
It has a perfectly innocent explanation. We could not think of a name that had good SEO because we talked about we went through a bunch of names and they were either already taken because skeletons are kind of a common thing in pop culture,
Mhm.
um, or it was misleading. Um,
Mm,
like at one point we talked about we came up with a horror title. It was something like sinking bones or something like that, and it had this like really dark foreboding atmosphere, and that's just not the atmosphere of Bones Deep.
gotcha.
um, it could do horror, but I definitely think it's more lighthearted than that.
I would I'm a professional horror writer, and I would probably not want to do that with Bones Deep.
No,
It's not the kind of game I would want to run with it. Although
no,
yeah, it could be possible.
sure. um, and we just kept coming back to the title of Bones Deep, and we
Okay.
thought it was kind of stupid and simple, and it had great SEO, and it's that's what happened.
David, as a man who's named his one of his games Morca Beans, SEO means nothing to me. Um, it's not a thing I'm good
So
at.
funny.
Um, all right, we talked for like 30 minutes about Bones Deep, but anyone watching could be forgiven for thinking that's all you do. But it's not. I have open here, and I'm going to get very bright very quickly. There we go. I have open your website,
Oh,
Technical
there's a
Grimoire.
dark mode. There's a dark mode in the top
There
right.
is.
Yeah.
Okay, now I just look greasy. I'm at your website, technicalgrimoire.com. Great website. You have some really good downloads. Uh, handouts, merchant tables, stuff that like you can just grab and download. You also have some cool generators that I used your Troika generator and tracker in the past for running games on Wandering Monster. Stygian library generator, weird hunt, like lots of cool stuff. Um,
Thank you.
but right now, let's talk about games.
Mhm.
Um, now I didn't know you did that one. I downloaded this one before I knew about you, David. Uh, let's talk about Jedi Wushu.
Oh my god, we're going way back.
Yes, sir. Hey, if you don't want to talk about it, don't put it on your page.
No,
Um,
that's fair.
I love Wushu. I love
Mhm.
wire fu, kung fu, gun fu. And
Yes.
you designed a game. Oh no, Daniel. Nope, Daniel Bain designed the original Wushu system, and then you said,
Yep.
"You know what this needs? The Force and lightsabers."
Yep.
So tell me about Jedi Wushu.
So the version of Jedi Wushu available on my site is actually the second version with cleaned up presentation and revised text. That second version came out in 2016, so we are digging way back. Um, I think I designed this game to be readable on my Kindle because that was how I consumed books back in the day. Yeah, because the PDF has like a weird 6:9 format. Um, Jedi Wushu is very directly the normal Wushu rules with a bunch of examples for Star Wars content. Daniel Bain did all of the good stuff. I really just added a layer of Star Wars on top. I don't think I added any new mechanics or ideas. It's just a ton of um, Jedi content. He deserves all the credit for making a beautifully fun and exciting game.
Okay, I'll let you off on that one. I again, that was ad lib because I downloaded Jedi Wushu not too long ago during my like I need more stuff to do kung fu. Essentially, I was waiting for Joel Clark's uh fist game to come out. So
Yeah.
all right, I'm gonna come up a little bit more to Tempered Legacy, which is a supplement, not a full game. Um, I love this kind of thing, and this is really pretty. Tell us about Tempered Legacy.
So Tempered Legacy is an RPG supplement. It's a zine, about 60 pages. It's pushing up against book size, but it's still printed softcover, 6:9. Um, and it contains a bunch of magic items. The kicker and the gimmick for this one is that all of the magic items have powers that are locked behind the regrets of their previous owner. So you might have a sword. The owner tried to reach the top of the Crystal Peaks. She never made it. And the sword has an ability that if you reach the top of the Crystal Peaks, it will unlock its power and reveal its true nature to you. And the book is a advice on making your own tempered weapons. It's a bunch of beautiful examples written by cool contributors, and it features a lot of public domain artwork. That was my first big foray into public domain work.
So while you were talking, uh, I decided to use your forge a tempered weapon button on your site, and I forged Scruple the Axe. It's a flail created from steel with pieces of paper scattered throughout the construction. Uh, a few seconds after the weapon is embedded in an enemy or surface, a bolt of lightning strikes it. I if I can if I can spend at least 338 gold to ruin or discredit a foe of mine, specifically a bard, the weapon will float in place when I let go of it. And if I can develop a harmful habit and maintain it for 75 days, easy peasy for John, let me tell you, I will know the location of a great treasure. Um, David, can I get you to autograph a copy of this and send it to me?
I would be happy to.
I would love that. I want this very badly. There you go. This is a verbal contract between me and David. So all you
That's
listeners know,
right.
I now owe him money. Um,
Correct.
okay,
Yeah, the generator was fun to work on. I did all the website design and the generator design myself, and that was super fun to work on. And the zine came afterwards to flesh out the ideas and give more pre-written examples.
very cool. Now, s- uh, taking a break from your games, are you a full time designer?
No,
What
no,
is
this
your
is.
day gig? How do you pay the bills?
Um, I am a DevOps engineer, a software engineer, um, and game design is kind of one of my only creative outlets.
Okay. I just so you know, David, my day one of my day jobs is analyst research producer.
What does that
So
mean?
I take reports from people like you and give them to other people like you that don't know what the first person knows. Um, we've done lots of DevOps reports, so
Oh,
many.
nice.
Um, I ask because the your website's beautiful.
Thank you.
Um, uh, very easy to navigate, very intuitive. It looks great, and I say that so people know that they should go there. I'll link it in the show notes, uh, pretty shortly. So there's 3 more things I wanna discuss on your website, and we're gonna do them leading up to the big reveal. First, Low
Ooh.
Country Crawl, a Southern Gothic RPG design. So first question, where don't dox yourself, but whereabouts do you live?
Oh, I'm very publicly a South Carolina Charleston local. Um,
Okay. Alright, I
I'm
guess you
really
can do
involved
Southern
in.
Gothic then.
Well, what's cool is, and so I will try to keep this brief. Low Country Crawl was written by uh, John Gregory. He came up with the idea, and he pitched it to me as a zine. Um, I added a few bits of content to it, but mostly just helped him structure it and get it looking nice. We partnered with local artists, local consultants, local writers, and a portion of all of those sales go to a local charity that I'm involved in.
Oh,
So it's
very
very
cool.
much born and bred in the southern like uh, low country region, and it is
Alrighty.
based on local legends and local history, and it's so just like Bones Deep, it's more real than not.
I love it. I love it. As a as a Texan and everything that that entails, unfortunately. I've co-written books before where I had that took place in Texas where I had to take the other author aside and be like, "Hey, bud, we don't. That's not a
Yeah,
thing."
yeah.
Not sure.
Well, and yeah, if I can also take another add a brief detail, we worked extensively with local consultants. Johnny and I are two white guys, and we worked with a local team of black writers and artists to make sure that we were correctly portraying things like, you know, the perils of slavery, how society was impacted by all the evils that happened, and we tried to provide a true history that's not
Right.
like
I see.
whitewashed or
You
glossed
have
over.
Erica Veal and
Mhm.
Akela.
Mhm.
Were the
Both of those are
consultants.
consultants. Yep.
You work with Michael Lee Harris as one of the artists, who's
Mhm.
a person of color, and Stephen Bramlett is one of the writers, who is again a person of color. So I am all for diversifying and including as many viewpoints as possible, and then as many projects as possible.
Yeah. Especially with this subject. We wanted to make sure that we were correctly representing because it was dicey for a while.
Yeah, I can see that. Let's talk about the overpowered solo role playing uh, you got here.
Hmm.
You say
So
that.
overpowered.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's not finished yet. So that's the big caveat.
Okay.
Um, it is my attempt at a solo role playing game with a heavy emphasis on a custom electronic dice app.
So it says on here that you can use this to play any adventure module that relies on math.
Correct.
Can you explain that to me? Because I'm dumb and I don't understand.
So we tend to think of solo RPGs as replicating the traditional role playing experience, but by yourself. You roll to see if you defeat the monster, you roll to see if you pick the lock, and you roll to see what happens. Solo or overpowered takes a different perspective. Overpowered turns any adventure module into a resource management game that you play through. And the reason that it's compatible with any system is that you use the numbers of a stat block and nothing else. So if a monster has 10 HP, does 12 damage, and can move 20 feet per second, you just take those numbers, remove any of their meaning, and you spend points to overcome the numbers. And it turns it into an abstract game of math layered over a role playing scenario. Um, I'm still working on the pitch and the rules, and it's weird. I still don't know how to sell it or market it, but
I
I
was just
have
say,
done several playthroughs that I enjoyed, so that's something.
generally speaking, people try to pitch math as like, okay, but you can add dragons, and now it's in D&D. And you said, okay, but what if we remove the dragons and it was just math?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's I gotta work on the pitch.
I can roll dice then. No, no, I took that out too.
Yeah, you have a grid of dice that you gain dice by accomplishing things, and then you spend those dice to accomplish other things, and it's a bit of resource management.
I I'm a person who buys a lot of adventures and games and doesn't get to play a lot of them.
Yep,
So,
that's me. That's me
we're
too.
joking about like you took all the things that we like about this and or like nope, just math now. But honestly, like as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, if I can use this to play some games that I've been really wanting to just play through the story, that'd be fantastic.
Hmm. Yep.
So I will.
Um, it also doubles for me as a GM prep tool because you get
Oh,
to play through the adventure, see all the content. In about an hour and a half, you can play through almost any adventure module.
nice.
Mhm.
I think that
It is.
it's a cool concept, and I will watch it with I will watch your career with great interest.
Me
Um,
too. I can't wait till I figure out what to do with it.
that's a secret I'll never know. Okay, so you have you have decided you want more of my money. Uh,
Correct.
therefore, you are going to be launching a new Kickstarter next month, uh, called Bridgetown. Now, I have some of the art on the overlay that's kind of going through um, for Bridgetown, but why don't you tell us about this?
Sure. So, in the context of all my other games, Bridgetown is one of the first books that was not written by me. Technical Grimoire is just acting as the publisher. So, the artwork was by Charlie Ferguson. It was written by John Gregory and Adrian Ramos. Layout is done by Shane Kellen. So, I take no credit for all of the amazingness that is in this book, but I will excitedly tell you about it. Bridgetown is a pastoral liminal RPG setting of a never ending, ever crumbling bridge. Like Bones Deep, it is built for Troika, and like any OSR game, it's easily adaptable to almost any rule system. The gimmick of I joke that all my games have to have a gimmick. This one's no different. We use the liminal tag because the setting is about it's set on a narrow bridge that goes on forever, and we describe the strange communities and civilizations that have made a home on this infinite bridge floating in space. um, so it's a very unique, bizarre setting, and I think the writing really shines. It's way more troika weirdness than Bones Deep.
Nice. I uh many years ago, I worked on a game called Gruff, which
The card game.
was yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Uh
Love Gruff. Great
Gruff
game.
is fantastic. Now, when I say work on, I want to be very, very clear. I did some editing and some like creative writing with the designer Brent Critchfield, who is the real like
Mhm.
did everything. Um, but I am all for playing Goatmen in liminal spaces. It's like it's a thing. It's it's
Mhm.
if I had a dime for every game about goats in liminal spaces, I'd have two dimes. It's not a lot of dimes, but it's weird that I have two of them. Um, so okay, now this is a really interesting point here, right? Because at some point you've made the leap from being a designer who had a web store to showcase your work to being a publisher. That is a tempting but terrifying shift. It's one I've made. Uh So, 3 questions, I'll quick fire them at you. What's wrong with you? Have you lost your damn mind? And, what is the most exciting thing about this project for you as a publisher?
Sure. First of all, the list of things that are wrong with me will have to be on a separate podcast. I will
Sure.
happily guest star where you psychoanalyze all the problems with me. Um, uh, I don't remember the second
That's
question,
fine.
and for the third question, um, this is this is a little bit personal, but I have, as much as I enjoy writing and creating and sharing that with people, over time I found that the thing I really enjoy is the people, the community. Um, and when I work on a game, Bones Deep is a great example. I enjoyed the writing and working on that, but I enjoyed collaborating with other people more. I enjoyed getting to help new writers adapt to the weird structure that RPG requires. I enjoyed reaching out to artists or editors or designers who haven't really gotten the chance to dive in yet and expose them to my audience. And I've been doing that with Low Country Crawl, Bones Deep, and I want to do that more because the chance to connect with people, collaborate with people, and make sure we all get paid at the end of the day is really exciting. And I'm working on Overpowered on my own time and still doing personal projects, but I'm really enjoying this shift to publishing because I enjoy the project management, I enjoy connecting with new people, and I enjoy sort of helping other writers and artists. Um, we can make something better together than we could on our own. Uh, and that's been like a new passion that I've discovered over the last year or two. And I'm trying to do that more and more. And Bridgetown's like the first big step in that process.
Very cool. When I first got involved in a company making games, the designer and owner told me, in order to run a company, you have to like essentially you have to like income more than you like people.
Sure.
And having run Madness Heart Press for going on 5 years, I've been involved in the publishing of right around 75 to 80 books at this
Wow.
point.
That's awesome.
Um, Thank you. It's a lot, and I am digging myself into an early grave day by day. Um, I don't agree.
Hmm.
It may make you more successful in the short term, but by putting an emphasis on people and relationships, I've gotten my hands on. Uh, I work with an author named Edward Lee, extreme horror, godfather of extreme horror. He pays my bills with his book, and I got him because I was nice to a friend of his.
Hmm.
I knew him. We were acquaintances, but I was nice to a friend of his, and I was nice to her because I'm nice. But she came to me because I was nice to another friend, and it's that networking of being decent, being kind, and being someone who shows people respect that has allowed me to succeed as both a publisher, a writer, and as a game designer. And when you say what I like doing is working with people, what you're saying is I want to give new authors a chance. I want to give writers a chance. I want to help people become better. And I might be putting my own words in your mouth, and if so, I apologize. I want to bring interesting projects to the fore. That's important to me. That's breathtakingly important to me, because
Hmm.
what what drives me towards buying games, Bones Deep, Bridgetown. We played Necro Nautilus by Adam Vast the other day, which is another game
Oh,
that
beautiful.
focuses on memories and is gorgeous. Ugh,
Hmm.
Adam Vast, call me. Um,
Yeah.
um, these are games that are not like others. There's a danger there. There's a real danger in making a new sort of game. first, maybe people don't want the type of game you're making. And that's the imposter syndrome all of us deal with every single day. Two, maybe it won't be good. And the flip side of that is I personally don't feel that doing something I know that's going to be successful is as rewarding as putting out something that feels unique, that feels new. It's incredibly risky, and I have personally eaten glass on many books. Uh, and I will and going if I went back in time, I would publish them again and again and again because they are cool and they deserve to exist in this world. Bones Deep has been successful. You did it. And
Hmm.
it's very cool and it's very interesting and nuanced. It is, in my opinion, a complete success story. Obviously, I don't know the finances behind it. I know better than most that you can blast your funding goal out of the water and still be in the red. But uh, Bones Deep is a super cool game. Bridgetown looks like it's going to be incredible. I think you're doing amazing work, David. And I'm really excited to, watch your growth as a publisher now, as well as a designer. And I hope that sometime in the future you and I can work together. In fact, because I like what you're doing.
That's a legally binding promise. Internet, you heard that?
There you go.
I'll send him a copy of Tempered Legacy, and then he has to work with me. That's the
That's
deal.
it's all here in the verbal paper, baby.
But I want to build on what you were saying for a second.
Please.
Um, I think there's also a rare opportunity. There's a common understanding that in order for a game to be successful, you have to support it. I don't know if you've seen this discourse, but like
Yeah.
you release the rules
Yeah.
for free, and then you do an adventure every year to build the audience. Like Mothership was big on that, Morkborg, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Troika's doing the same thing. Um, I don't like to do that. I get bored with ideas and I move on. Doing two Troika books in a row is rare, and probably I don't know how much Troika I'll do after this. And I think the joy, again, to come back to a publisher is I get to connect with a different group of people when I switch genres, when I switch concepts, when I switch game systems. And all of our communities are small enough that people are welcoming and excited about stuff. Um, and it doesn't feel like this high risk thing. Um, when you said your quote about, oh, if you're going to be a successful publisher, you have to like profit more than people. I agreed with it because it's hard for me to remember that what we're doing is successfully publishing a book. It feels like a bunch of people making something cool together, and then if people like it, they like it, and if they don't, they don't, and we're going to make it anyway.
Mhm.
And I loved everything you had to say. I think that's so cool. Um, and it's cool that at least for now, until our community gets big enough to get more and more toxic, we have that seems to be like the prevailing sentiment.
I it when I first got involved in the horror community as a writer and then as a publisher, I was really blown away by the lack of toxicity that I saw in the community. Then I started watching publishers folding for toxic behavior, and I saw writers
Mm.
being ostracized for toxic behavior, and I saw the feuds and this. And as I get more and more of a name for myself and more enmeshed in the TTRPG community, I see some of that. But I also see people fighting against it. You know, in any community you kind of get in, you'll if you try to, you can find the kind people that just want to make cool stuff. And if you cling to them, uh, you can build your own community that kind of insulates you against the toxicity. um, in a really, really nice way. So, yeah, there's toxicity in our community. Look, I'm in the morkboard community, um, and there's because it got so popular so fast. There's some people who really hate morkborg. There are
Right.
people who despise anyone who says the name of the yellow book, but um, I don't interact with them.
Right.
And I don't interact with any of the people that are saying things like, "Oh, if you don't play Morkborg, you're an idiot." I only interact with the people that want to do cool stuff, and that's their goal.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, I think to bring it all back, next month, Bridgetown comes out on Kickstarter. I think I have a date here. No, just April 2023. There is a newsletter if you go to technicalgrimoire.com, so you can sign up for that and get
Mhm.
updates. I may have already signed up for your newsletter. I'm not sure. Um, but the important thing to remember is that I'm going to say this with my whole chest. Listener, watcher, viewer, if you like the games that someone is making, buy them, support them, click that notify upon launch button, subscribe to their newsletter. I can't lift this finger without lifting the others first. Um, and then tell other people about those games. The only thing that I mentioned that costs money there is buying the game. The other four things are free
Mhm.
and they are immeasurably helpful to indie creators. Um, so do that. David, we're just about closing out of time. Is there anything you want to say, to ask, to promote, to yell, to scream, complaints, anything? Hit me.
uh, support Bridgetown. Like I said, I take no credit for all the good stuff that's in it. I just get to be a cheerleader and a supporter of it. And I'm so excited for the work that Johnny and Adrian and Charlie and Skullboy and Shane are doing with this book. And the Kickstarter is going to be great. The book is going to be incredible.
I will
And
back
I'm
this book
so
day
excited.
one. No question. Uh, for all of you out there, again, go to technicalgrimoire.com. It'll be linked in the show notes if you're watching this on video or audio on demand. You can follow Technical Grimoire on Twitter. I think at Technical Grimoire. You can follow me on Twitter. How about that? At Kaiju Poet. You can also catch us at MHP_horror or Juan Moncast and follow Juan Moncast. Charles Charles Bernard runs Juan Moncast, and he does an amazing job of keeping like aggregating news and articles about gaming to that Twitter feed. So it's super informative. It's how I figure out anything's happening now. Um, I have a new book out. It's called The
Ooh.
Hillels Have Eyes. Extreme graphic violence. Trigger warning there. And consensual sexual violence. Trigger warning. Um, it's a lot. It's a
You
very
accused my book of having a misleading sexual title.
my book doesn't have a sexual title, but it has some misleading sex. I'll tell you what. Um, Madness Heart Press also released a new book from Susan Snyder today called Picking Scabs. It's a chapbook of feminist horror poetry. Susan Snyder is an amazing, amazing poet, and this stuff is incredible. I am shooketh by it. So pick those two books up. You can find them on Amazon or madnessheart.press. Um, David, I think that's it. I think we did a good job.
Yeah,
I think
Kapla.
hooray. I think I get the wet food with the gravy tonight. Hooray. Um friends, family, there's nothing left to say, but thank you so much for joining us on this consensual journey that we call randomly generated encounters. On behalf of Wandering Monster, I've been John Valdesberger.
And I've been David Schirduan.
We will see you next time, and we will be back tomorrow. Gosh, with a Wandering Monster. Until then, stay safe and keep your bones happy.